my father passed away when I was 6 months old. And, as we were, going through life, the, beginning stages of my life, when I think about it, it was very dark. We didn't have salah in our home. I was born in Afghanistan, 1979. And that was exactly at the time that the coup d'etat took place, where the communists, they overthrew the government. My father was one of those people who, not one of those hardcore religious people. He was just a, regular person who was against the communist government. He was put on, the hit list, and he was taken when I was 6 months old. And my mother says that when we came, the door was left open, and you were still in your crib, and they had taken your father. And like this, we came to America in 1980. And we were staying in New York, and those initial stages in the 80s, from age 1, I remember, to age 11, 12, I don't remember, masjid, I don't remember Quran, I don't remember deen, nothing of that. We didn't have any of that in our life. So just like a regular American kid, going to public school, Christmas, Halloween, the whole 9 yards. That's how I remember growing up. And the first connection to when my life actually changed was a very, very good friend of mine in, all the way in junior high. This young man, mashallah, he used to wear shalwar kameez at school, different than everybody else. And I asked him, I said that, why do you dress like this? He said, I'm a Muslim. I said, well, I'm Muslim too. I just knew that much, that I'm Muslim. And what is Muslim like, culturally Muslim? Like Muslim is like something that you check off in a, on a list of things. Okay, are you Christian? No. Are you? Oh, Muslim. Yeah, that's what we are. That's what I considered being Muslim meant. So I said, but I'm Muslim too. I said, but why do you dress like this? He said, well, I'm Hafiz of the Quran. He said, Hafiz of the Quran? What is Hafiz of the Quran? This is how lost I was. I said, what is Hafiz of the Quran? He said, well, I memorized the whole Quran. Oh, come on, man, you can't memorize a whole book. I said, it's okay, I could just start reading from anywhere. And he's like, how would you know if I even... So that was the moment that I came home and I told my mom, I said, Mother John, I want to tell you something. I met a Hafiz of the Quran today. She said, oh, really? In your school? He said, yeah. He said, Qari da Afghanistan, Qari khuma kura megim. In Afghanistan back home, Qari, Hafiz, the blind people would become Qari and Hafiz. So if they were blind and if they were somebody that wasn't, so this is kind of like the background I was coming from. Like they had a very negative sentiment towards people of religion, negative sentiment towards, ilm and ulama and hufad. So, very modern type, non-dini, but whatever, they still said we're culturally Muslim. So that's the household that I was raised in. I said, at that moment when I met this person who was a Hafiz of Quran, and I'm going to get to the main point, what's so amazing about this Hafiz of Quran. My mom said, that's really nice, you found a good friend, and it was ended. But that night I was thinking to myself, how come I don't know anything about my deen? I don't even know how to recite the Quran. Look at this person. He's same age as me. We're 13 years old and he's completely memorized the entire Quran and he's in algebra. That was he's algebra, and he's good in his school and he gets straight A's. And he's a Hafiz of Quran, and look at how beautifully he dressed. I mean, it had a great impact upon me. And this is another thing, brothers and sisters. You don't know how many people you will impact by your sacrifices and you practicing your deen. This is who I was. I was a kid, literally, immigrant, not even first generation, immigrant kid coming from Afghanistan, living the, American dream, which is the Islamic nightmare, right? So I'm there and I'm lost my everything. I've lost everything. And this young man who's holding on to his deen, Hafiz of Quran, straight A's at school and, representing Islam in the most beautiful way, sunnah libas and just beautiful. And just his demeanor and the way he carried himself changed my entire life. He changed my life. And he got me to think that, look at what he's achieved. How come I don't know the Quran? How come I don't know how to read the Quran? How come I don't know about prayer? And it was that moment that I said, I have to change my life because this is embarrassing. This is a Muslim. I'm not a proper Muslim. And the interesting thing was, as I started learning about the deen from him, he would bring the Nurani Qaida I said, I want to start learning. I said, Hafiz, I want to start learning. He said, okay, but you want to start learning, you're going to have to listen to everything that I say. You're not going to be, ifs, ands, and buts. I said, whatever you say, I just want to learn how to read the Quran. I want to learn how to pray. Yeah, exactly, yeah. إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Right? You're not going to have patience. No, I said, I'll do whatever you tell me. So then, every day, he brought the Nurani Qaida. He would bring the alphabet book. And in lunch break, not Al-Qaida, Nurani Qaida. So this was before all of that. This was like in 91, 92. So he would bring the alphabet book, and every day at lunch he would teach me how to recite. And in those lunch breaks I learned how to read the Quran. In those lunch breaks. And the interesting thing is that this Hafiz al-Quran, he had studied at Ashraf al-Madaris, the madrasa of my beloved Sheikh Shah Hakim Akhtar Sahab, who later on I didn't know.
That explains he's not a typical graduate from here.
No, he wasn't. He was a very, very special person. So the point being is, when people talk about, shakhsiyat parasti, or people talk about, this is the reality of kunu ma sadiqeen. That young man in that time, to me, he was a saint. He's there. He's in California. And he to me, in that situation that he was in, and Allama Sha'rani rahmatullahi mentions that person who implements the sunnah and establishes the deen in a place where nobody is implementing the sunnah and establishing the deen, he is the qutub of that place. Allama Sha'rani rahmatullahi said that. That person who is implementing the sunnah and establishing the deen in a place where nobody is establishing the deen and everybody is ghafil, he is the qutub of that place. And that young man, maybe 14 years old, 13 years old, he was, and like I said, we think about saints to be, a 90-year-old buzurg sheikh that, he just looks at you and then, you faint or something like that. That is not what we talk about a saint. A saint, somebody who lives his life according to the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jalla and the sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How much sacrifice he must have made. How much hardships he must have went through. That in that time, and, nobody, wearing shalwar qameez or having the sunnah beard or whatever, nobody would do that. And I would remember specifically, one day out of the week he would wear a turban. And I would ask him, one day he said, today, this is Friday. It was like, oh, okay. And he's like, you know what we need to do? We need to establish Jummah. And the point being is, all of this, what we speak about, this young man who became such a influence in my life, all of this was because at such a young age, he had the suhbah of the ulama. He had the suhbah and the company of the righteous people. He had the company of that pious person that now wherever he went, وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ. Allah Ta'ala had given him a nur, and with that nur he walked amongst the people. That now whoever came his way, who would Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala had willed the hidayah of the person, like a wretched and lost person like me, I was completely lost. That person became a source of guidance and hidayah for me. And more than my beloved Shaykh, Hazrat Maulana Hakim Akhtar Sahab, rahmatullah alayhi, that I think ijma'an, everybody, nobody doubts that he was a wali and a saint. But I want to make mention of the person who became the sabab of that. That young man, nobody would consider him. I consider him a saint. Nobody would say that he is a very special person. Nobody would consider that he is a wali of Allah Azza wa Jal, or somebody who is, a source of hidayat or guidance. But for me, he was my Hazrat at that time. He was my Shaykh. He was my guy. And I'm saying every single one of us who practice the deen, every single one of us who, hold on to that burning coal. You're holding on to that burning coal in the time where, the deen is being mocked. In the time where people are embarrassed to even wear the hijab or to, look like a Muslim or to be called a Muslim. They're holding that burning ember, that is a person who is a friend of Allah. That is a person who is a saint and a wali of Allah Azza wa Jal. And you don't know to how many people you have the key to the lock of their heart. Don't underestimate the influence that you may have in your college, in your school, at your high school, at your junior high, wherever you go, at your work, at your workplace. And like I said, that this person, he was like, a little Khalifa.